Have you been wondering if it's easy to learn JavaScript and land your first web development job in 2023? If so, follow this tutorial and smash the fundamentals of this beloved programming language like data structures, algorithms, if statements, for loops and many more. If you're interested, my name is Kasper and welcome to my YouTube channel. To correctly and smoothly start this tutorial, set up your VS Code by opening the new folder, which is empty, like mine, the JS tutorial, and here in VS Code, install the extension Live Server. After installing, here in the footer you have something called Go Live, it's a button, and you can go and check your HTML code in the browser. So basically, entire website is built with HTML. So I have to create a new file, index.html, and with the shortcut I can create a new document of HTML, and this is the website, very basic, with empty body and some meta tags. You don't have to need that and no right now, but I will go live and I have this on my browser in the local host. So I'm ready to make inspect element with the right button of the mouse and go to the console. I will minimize my VS Code window and share, or maybe firstly I will click that to make another window with the console, and I will divide my screen for the console and for the VS Code. I can now zoom in the console and I have everything needed. So next thing, I will only enable the logs to be visible, and it's practically set up. What is more, to set up this application, I need to create a new JavaScript file in which I will be going with each topic which I will present like this. So I'm creating the new file, and it can be like intro.js. So the file with the extension .js is a JavaScript file, and to include that in the HTML, so to display it in the browser as a website, I have to add in the head tags script tags, and it will be intro.js. It will not work like that. And I have imported the intro.js, and I will make a first command, very easy, console.log, and pass the string hello world. So it's visible in the console, and I've just made a first command in our JS file. So basically it works like that. I have the HTML file, which is the body of the entire website. I have their different tags, and for example, in the head tags, it's not visible in the user interface. It's only some meta tags like title, which is displayed on the tab, the script, which is imported, some viewports, and meta tags. And here I have the body tags, in which everything is visible in the website. It constructs the UI. So we've made the console log, and console log is basically the method to print a message in a web console, like we have there. After right-clicking on the mouse on the website and inspecting an element, we have the console tab. We can go also for some sources, network timelines, etc. But the main debugging tool is the console with the console log. So every web developer, no matter which level he has and how skilled he is using the console log and console in the web browser to print some variables, check them, and debug it. I have the console log, and the second basic thing in the JavaScript is making comments. So comments are made with two slashes, and I can type there, for example, this is a comment. So it will be not visible. The browser will reload the JavaScript file, the entire page, and hello world is displayed second time. So it is the one line comment. But what if I want to make some text like in few lines? This is a long comment which I do not want to display. And I can achieve the commented lines like making each line with the slashes, which is not super practical when I have too much code. But also the most suitable solution is slash star and closing it with also star and slash. So this is the very long comment, and it's how it's nested in the file. Comments are very important part in the developing process. So I can make some comments just to indicate for some other developers or me in the future that this piece of code makes something. For example, what is not clear in the first look, I can indicate that, for example, this for loop, this function is getting some users in the application and giving them some admin roles, etc., whatever. And what is more, I can make these comments looking super visible, like adding the new extension, and it's called better comments, which I will show you. And these comments are not visible as this gray or which dim in VS Code you have color, but you can indicate that some comments are, for example, I don't know, the other function, but important, with the star, and some alerts, like when I type like that, I can indicate that be careful, this function has to be removed. I can add a question mark and indicate, for example, that I do not know now how to code it. And the other method, when I type to do, I can pass, for example, in this line of code I have to do in the future some new feature. So this is how to style your comments in the most beautiful way, in the most visible, and look like a pro and have the more smooth and quick development process. The next very fundamental and basic part in the JavaScript is the variable. So I can make different variables and use different methods for that. And maybe I will just divide this part of the file with comment variable or variables, and below I will declare some new variables. Declaration of the variables is only the adding the new variables in the memory. So as JavaScript is statically typed programming language, not like C++ or Java, I do not have to add some and define the data structure. Like I have string and I have to define which string, and maybe for some integers I don't have to define how many bytes it can store, etc. So it's pretty simple, and JavaScript is very beginner friendly at this point. So there are few ways of declaring the variables, and I will present them right now. So the first is var, and maybe I will add item1 is equal to car, and it's the first variable. I will maybe delete this console log to clear our console, and I have the first item declared as a variable. So this name stores, this variable is named item1 and stores the string car. The next way of declaring the variable is let, and I can make let item2 and, for example, add a string moto. And it's the second variable. So I have two of them, and the third method is just, it's very ugly and don't do it ever, but it's possible to store it and display in the console. Item3 without var, let, or another method, I can add bicycle. And the last method, constant item4 is equal to sheep. So I have 4 variables right now, and I can display them in console, and I will go for them. So I have car, moto, bicycle, and sheep. Summing up this part of the tutorial, which is variables, I have these 4 methods. So this one you can delete and never use again. It's a just reminder that it works, but it's not practical. Var is used in the older version of the browsers, so it was stopped in 2015. It was stopped supported. You have even the console with the it differs in the console. I have the let and const. So basically, as a modern JavaScript developer, you can use only them. I will delete this console to not have problems. And just remember, it's a quick reminder. Basically, we are using the const method. So if I am declaring something into code, I use the const, but there are some differences. And you have to remember that if I want to change variable in the later part of the code, use the let method. So if the variable is constant, just use the const. If it will be changed, like it will be in the function, variable, or whatever, use the let. And I'm going to explain that. So I have this item moto. I will console log that. Consoling these variables is just passing it into console log. I have moto, and for example, I will change the value of the item by assigning the new string item is equal to car. I will copy that and paste there. And we see that our variable has changed. So the 13th line of the code console is just printing the item with the value motto, and 16th is printing the value car. And it's how the let works. I can't do it with the const. It will not work. It will be an error. So I can see there is an error with the assignment. The best way of memorizing this declaration method is just remembering that, for example, I have the price, which I define with the constant. Because this price is constant, we don't indicate that there is an inflation or whatever. The price is constant. So price 1 is equal to 20. It's a number without unit. Const price 2 is equal to 30. And prices are constant, but total price can be changed because I can add price 3, price 4, etc. And right now I will add them, and to make it more rememberable I will add price 3, price 4, price 5. So I have prices which are constant, and the sum of them, for example, I'm going to the shopping and I'm buying 2 items with the price 1, price 2. It's let. I will console log it. I have to enable the logs. Maybe I will delete the errors. I have 50, but I just come back to the shop and total will be different because I'm taking some things more and I'm adding to my basket price 2, price 2, price 2, price 1, and for example price 3. Price 3 is 40. I have to make another console log, and in the first case is 50, in the second case is 90. So this is how basically these declarations work. Just remember the main rule, always use const, but if you will change the variable, use let, and it's all. This part I will go through the console methods. Let's start with the top 10 most fundamental console methods, and the first one is the console log. So like I described in the first part, console log is just a method to print a message on the web console. So here is the web console. I just made a screen with only that, without the website. So I can make there a message, for example, hello from the course, and I have this now in the console, and I can print any string, any number, any variable. So it's a great tool for the debugging in the different kind of function, for loops. So if the JavaScript developer has some issue to do, application for example breaks, he can just put different type of console in the code in different lines and just print the variables or some messages and see in which part of the code the function or if statement or loop is not working correctly and quickly fix it. So it's the #1 debugging tool for the JavaScript developer. The second one, console method, is console.info, and is typed like that, console.info instead of log. And I can also type here a string, for example. This is the information, and I have this icon in the browser, so it's very similar. It's used to display a message to the browser console, and as it is pretty similar to console log, developers use it for the permanent messages to output to the console in their code. So it's also a great debugging tool. The next one is the console warn, and is typed like console.warn. And I can also pass there a string. This is a warning. And I have also a different icon here. And console warn is used to print warning messages on browser console. And it takes an argument of a message to be displayed like that. So it can be also a great debugging tool. And to make it even more complicated, I can pass there not only a string but an object. And for example, this object will be declared like that: name Casper, alert, be careful with JavaScript. Okay, so there is displayed an alert like an object. The next one, console method, is console.error. So I will go with console error, and I can type here also string. This is a huge error, and is also displayed here as a different type, so I can filter that in the console also. I have there, for example, only errors, only warnings, only logs, infos, etc. Now I have all types enabled, but for example, if I'm debugging, I can use different types to easily filter and check in the more accurate way where my code breaks, when it's broken, and quickly fix that. I also can pass to the error an object. Let me paste this object, and it's pretty the same. The next method is the assert, and it's constructed like that, console.assert. And what it is basically, so using console assert method is just to write a message to the console based on the condition. For example, it prints a message to console only if the first argument expression evaluates to false. So let's finish it, and for example, I will use document.get element by ID, and here type ID, for example, let type name, and if there is no div with the ID name, I can check there is no, so it's false. There will be displayed the string no element found. Assertion failed, no element found. The sixth console method is the console.count, and to make it more visible, I will nest it in the for loop. So I will make like that, and increment it. Okay, open the loop, and here I can type console.count, and basically this method is used to write a message on the console as the number of time it's called. So I have there a custom icon, and I can see that it was called 6 times, as the for loop started with 0, lower than 6 times it was called. And I can use also the console count reset after the count, console count reset, and it basically reset the counter, but maybe it should be with the uppercase. Yeah, and I can pass the for loop here, and counter is reset. Without that, it's not reset, so it's counting further. Another methods are console group and group end. So I can just make a grouping of the console logs. For example, maybe I will delete all of these logs, clear the console, and go for that. So I will make a console log. This is outside of the group. Then console.group first group, then console.log in the first group, then I will make the second group, okay, I maybe make here some enters, and then add in the second group, okay, and then I will make a group end, console group end, and I have now ordered the console in my browser. So maybe clear that once again, save, and here I can see the first group, console log in the first group, then in the first group is also the second group, it's nested, and when I type something outside the group end, and maybe this time I will use some emojis. It's a great idea for adding emojis in the console logs, especially when debugging, because it's more visible. And here I can once again, and it's still in the first group because I didn't end the first group. And now, for example, we copy the 2 fires or 3. I'm outside the first group, so this is the outer. So basically it's how the console group work, and many developers doesn't know this method, but it can be very beneficial and helpful in the debugging. One of my favorite console methods is the console.table, so I will delete the previous consoles and type console.table, and here I can include some arrays, objects, whatever, which will be super visible, and I will make an object, and for example id 0, name Casper, and what can I also add is the location Poland. And I have the nice table in the console, so it's a really helpful method in debugging, in printing some arrays, objects when you want to know what breaks the code. For example, you have an array in the function and some value is not added, you can simply go through the entire array object and have it in the most visible and clean way displayed in the browser, mainly the console of the browser. The last concept which I will show you with the console methods will be the console.clear, and it's typed like that, and it's just clearing the console in the browser, so no matter how many consoles will be attached above, everything will be cleared, and it's very helpful in attaching in the first line of the code or before the other consoles, so we can see only the console methods below this console.clear, not some attached after pre-rendering or whatever, but only the most wanted and valuable logs. So that's all. And in this part of the tutorial, let's go quickly and smoothly through the detailed let, const and var declaration of the variables in JavaScript. So let's go. So basically there are three methods of declaring the variables in JavaScript. First one is var method, and this method is global scoped, also function scoped, and it's not supporting the block scoped, but however is reassignable and redeclarable. So this is the first method. Let's go to the next one, which is the let method, and it's not global scoped, however it's function scoped, block scoped and reassignable, and it's not supporting the redeclarations. And the final one, const method, is not global scoped, it's function scoped, block scoped, and it's not supporting reassignable and redeclarable methods. And that's all, and let's go in the VS Code to describe these methods in the code. So basically, what does this all description means in the real coding? Let's see in the VS Code, because describing it with some table cannot be understandable enough. And let's start with the var method, and I will start with declaring the variable. For example, var x is assigned to hello coders, and then I will make a function. So there is a quick syntax for the function, name of the function hello, arguments passed, I will not pass any arguments, so empty brackets, and here what is function doing, I will make a redeclaration of x, so var x is assigned to hey from the function, and then I will make a reassign, so x will be equal to hola, Spanish hola, hi, and I will console it log from the function, log from the function, maybe I will use some emoji, rocket and pass the variable x. Okay, maybe this will be the second block, and the first block will be after redeclaration. Okay, so I have that. There also will maybe print it x above, and I will call the function because right now I only execute this code. There is only declared the function, but it's not called, so all the stuff here is not working on the browser. But if I call it with hello, passing the name of the function and arguments, there are no arguments, so empty brackets, and all the stuff is executed inside the function, and I can also print the x value outside the function, or maybe after function, and I will start it with some emoji, maybe fire. That's fireworks. Okay, I will clean that. So how it's doing? I've declared the hello coder string in the variable x, then it's printed with the console log declared above hello coders. Then is declared the function, and the function is called. So what is inside the function? I will redeclare the x, so there is a redeclaration, and it's possible according to the table which I presented previously. So I have var x, and it's visible here, and I can do it, which is not possible with let. Then I have reassign, and this will also be commented reassigned. So reassigned is also possible here, and printed the new value of hola, and after function, after executing, I have after function x and hello coders. So function just changed, and value is here printed again hello coders because it's global scoped. So we have discussed the var method. I will go quickly to let method and see how it differs from the var, and let's divide it with the command, and it will be let, just to make it visible. Here I will add var, and later there will be also const. The console is working. I will make only another console. Let is starting here. Okay, maybe I will use console.info, and it's visible. And basically what I will do is copying this piece of code and instead of var I will call let, and instead of x I will use, for example, the variable color and start with the black. There also pass the color, color, here also color, and here let color black, then console log declared above, then function redeclaration. In the function console log color reassignable, color console log, calling the function, and that's all. Maybe I will also comment it out here, clear the console. And what is done? There is an info that is starting here and declared above color black. Then from the function is color hey from the function. Maybe I should change it, for example red, then change it to blue. I will clear that. Okay, so now is more visible. And what has changed? So let is not global scoped, so this color, let color above, cannot be redeclared here. There is no redeclaration because it's a block scoped method, and all variable which will be declared with let differs from this in the functions, if statements, etc. So you can see that there is a declaration let color and let color 2 times in one file of the code, but it's not the same, and it can't be called redeclaration. It's another block. So it's just to remember. I can reassign, so it can be reassignable because I'm changing it to blue, but I can't redeclare. So for example, I will also redeclare it here, and there is an error, and it cannot be done because it's a block scoped method. With the var method it worked, so there were no problems, but with let it's not working correctly. So this is the main difference to remember, that var is global scoped, let is block scoped, and the same is with the const method. So we can go now for the const. So I will maybe copy also that and comment it out, pass it here, and change it. Const is starting here. I will clear the console, and const will leave the colors also, function const, and that can be all. And there is an error because the const method and let method differs from each other. With that const method can't be reassignable. So basically everything can work the same instead of that. So I cannot make color to another value. It's a constant and it has to stay like that. What is more, you can be curious what about arrays, and let me quickly go with the array. I will comment it out. And with array is just something called an exception or not, because it's not quite the same. And let's declare the y, which is the array, and this array is element 1, element 2, and let's make 5 elements. And I will add a new element. So basically I am changing this variable, and I'm adding the element 6 here. And what is changing? Console log y, and it changed, yeah. So array was declared with the const method, the new element is pushed and it has changed, and there are no errors. There is just a quick reminder about that and to be aware of that. And another thing that should be remembered, I can make a declaration of x, for example, with var, no problems. Var x, I will also console it log undefined. I just not assigned any value to that, so it's undefined. I can make the same with y and let. Okay. I will also print it. Okay. But can I do it like that? No, with constant method it's not possible. It can't be done. So it's also a quick reminder that it's not possible, and never do it because it will break. You will not be able to compile everything below that. That's all for this part of the tutorial. Thank you so much for watching that, and let's go to the next episode. In this part I will go through operators, identifiers and data structures. So if you haven't watched any previous episodes, you can stop this film and go back, or if you know exactly how to declare a variable, the differences between let, var, constant, etc., you can start from here. So let's go to the VS Code. So what exactly are the identifiers? In previous videos we used the declaration and variables, so we exactly know how it works but don't know what is it. So JavaScript variables must have been identified with unique names, and these unique names are called identifiers. So if I have some variable let x, this x is an identifier, as for example as var name is equal to Casper. This name is also an identifier, and this identifier can be made with single words or even letters. What is important, you can add here also some numbers, underscores and dollar signs, whatever, but it has to be configured like that, and don't use the JavaScript reserved words, like for example I cannot create var is conflicting, var let or var for, they are reserved keywords, so I can do it. Also, for example, var function, it's also not possible. So the identifier has to start with the letter, and let's check it. When I create, for example, let 1, it will not work, yeah. Let 1 Casper, it will also not work. Let 0 num, it also not work, but num 0, it works. But what if I type a dollar sign? It works. What if I type an underscore? It works. So I can add these two signs and any letter, and it will be working. What is more, the identifiers are sensitive to the uppercase and lowercase. So if I use let y lowercase and let y uppercase, they are two different variables. So just keep it in mind, so it will be visible in the code later. So if I have to make such variables, let's be very careful, because it can be very easily misleading to some annoying bugs which are very hard to search in the code base. Because let's imagine that you have these two variables, which one is uppercase, another one is lowercase, and you have to find that in the code. It can be super annoying and really difficult to looking for it. So just remind it. If we know what is an identifier, we can go to the assignment operator. So assigning some value to the variable is pretty simple and is made with the equal sign. And for example, let x and assign to x the value 9. This part is an assignment. It's not equal like in mathematical, like in algebra, because something like that will not make sense from the mathematical point of view, because when I go with the x to the left side, it's not possible to check what value has an x, because x will subtract and there will be 0 is equal to 7. But in programming, this means that there is a new assignment and it increments x with 7. And I can present that here. Console log x, console log x, and I have 9, and incremented with 7 is 16. I can do it once again, and it's going all over again. So it's just a note that equal sign is an assignment, but the equal in programming, in JavaScript, is just made with two equal signs. So you can now check, for example, I will use the if statement. If x is equal to 7, console log, yeah. And to achieve that, or maybe I will make a 23. Yeah, after incrementing it to the 23, the x is equal to 23 and prints the console log, yeah. So there are differences between the algebra equal sign and the programming one, which is an assignment. So let's go to the data types. I will clear the script and console and go with that. So basically, JavaScript variables can hold numbers like 100 or text, which is called the string in the JavaScript. And moreover, in JavaScript, we can handle many data types, and I will describe all of them, practically all of them here. So I will start with the numbers, and the first, for example, we will create constant, and number is equal to 10. So it's a number. We can console it log. And there is a 10 in the console. But if I take it in the quotation, there is a string. So you can see differences in the console of the browser with the color, but I will show you another method to check the type, but it will be later. So everything what is in quotation is a string, but if there is a number without the quotations, it's a data type number. string can be also passed in the single quotation mark, but my prettier extension is just changing it to the double quotation. But there is no problem with the single quotation and the double quotation. In JSX especially, we can use this type also of quotation to nest some variables inside, but it also is for advanced levels. Let me go with, for example, declaring the number p and p number. For example, we'll go with this 3.14, and to make decimal parts I just type point. What happened with comma? It doesn't work, only point in the JavaScript. What is more, I can add more numbers. Yeah, it works especially the same. And when I use something like const number 1 and make an assignment with some mathematical operator, so just to show that there are also infinities value, I will divide, for example, number 3 by 0. It's from mathematical point of view very stupid and it shouldn't be done like that. But if I console log it, number 1, there is an infinity, so it works like that. But if I change the sign, there is a minus infinity because we have the negative number here. What happens if I divide a string? So maybe I will make something like that. It can't be done like in the mathematical point of view, so it should display the not number, but my browser console is rendering it to the number. Let's check with the minus, and also is changing it by default. But in the older version of the browser, there should be an information that is not a number. Okay, we discussed the numbers of data types in JavaScript, so I have to add also something called big number, and big number will be, for example, a variable big number, very original, and it will be equal to some number with the n at the end, and it's the big number data type. I will console it log. It differs from the normal number with that of how much bits is reserved for this variable, so there are more storage for that. And to represent some operation, I will add two numbers, big number and to this big number a normal number. So let me make total is equal to big number plus 2, and there is an invalid mix of big integer and other type in addition. This is an error, so to such huge numbers I cannot add normal numbers because there are different data types like string and numbers. You can even see in the modern console that it's colored, highlighted differently. So just a quick reminder that it's not possible, but if I add, for example, 1 and it's working, and also is working. Another data type is a string. We also clear that and go with string. So basically, like I mentioned before, I can add a person variable and it's equal to some string, and for example I will name it Joe, and it's a string. And for example I can also use the single quote, but my pretter extension in VS Code will transform it to the double quotes. I can also make let name with these backwards quotations, and it will be Jim. And it differs from the previous one because, let me console log it. Right now I have Jim, but I can nest it there a different value and add the person, and I can print in the console this value of this variable person. So Jim Joe is just console log, but if I do it in the normal quotation, it will not work. Even if I skip these brackets, it doesn't work. I can make in this backward quotation without this $sign and curly brackets. It will also not work. So remember, only it works with the $sign and curly brackets inside the identifier, and it has to be in the backward quotation. So that's how it works. Next part is the array. So I can declare an array, and it's, for example, like that. Basically, what is the array? It's a matrix, and it's declared with the square brackets. So everything what is inside is it is the element of an array, and I can make an empty array. I will be consoling this log. Okay, there is an array, and console log is just indicating that there are 0 elements. I will pass some string, for example name. There is 1 element. I can pass also a number. There is the second element. I can pass there another array, empty array, or I can pass an element in this array. I can pass an empty object, which I will show in the next part. So that's how the array works. I can access an array by the elements. So array numeration starts with 0. This is the very fundamental part when it becomes to counting elements. So I'm not indicating it like 1, 2, 3, 4, first, second, third, fourth element. But if I want to call the first element in this array, which is name, I have to pass the identifier of the array, then the square brackets, and 0, which is the index of the first element. So if I pass 0, there will be displayed the first element. If I pass 1, there is the second element, 2, analogically third element, and 3, fourth element. So that's how array works. Another data type is an object. So object differs from an array with that there are curly brackets instead of square brackets. So that's an object, and I can have some key, some values inside. So I will pass name Casper, location Poland, and for example age, I can pass there a number 27. I can console and is visible in the console in the browser. There are also another methods of declaration of the object and array, which will be shown in the part of the tutorial when it comes to explaining more detailed way of the objects and arrays. Another part is, for example, the null. So there can be a variable with type null. It's just not undefined, but null, like 0, but not exactly the 0. We'll go through that also in the object arrays part. So if I type also only a, there is undefined, null is just null, just empty, and I can assign some value and it's defined with some value. Next part is the symbol. It's not used, but worth to mention. I've never used that in my development career, but I will show. And it was worth to mention that this type of data was introduced in the newer version of the JavaScript in 2015, and a value having this data type of symbol can be referred to as a symbol value. Whatever it means, let's show it on the script, and it's made with symbol, keyword, and I will pass the string hello. Okay, console is empty, and that's how it's declared. I can console it log, and there is a symbol how. I can also make it in a different way. Constant s is equal to symbol, keyword, and empty brackets. I will check also this value, so I have two symbols. Okay, and I can introduce you the way of checking the type of the variable. It can be very beneficial and helpful in some further development. So there is a keyword type of, and I can check the type of previous variable. So I can pass in the console log type of, and pass the s, and I see symbol. And for example, I will change as to number. So I see the number. I can pass an array. It's displaying the object. It's an exception. Object. I can pass a string and whatever. It's just checking the type of. So I have to remember that on array it will call the object no matter what I type inside, how many elements will be defined here. Another very basic and fundamental data type is the boolean. So I can declare the boolean as, and it can be true or false. And it's very helpful in some if statements and validation and making some conditions to render some part of the website, some part of the backend, etc. So the boolean is the key of correct development and clean coding. And type of is displayed as boolean. Moreover, when we have an array, type of display object, and the same situation is with the null. There is also an object, but undefined is checked as undefined. So that's all in this part of the tutorial. Thank you so much for watching that, and let's go to the next part. In this episode I will show you the basic arithmetic, algebra in JavaScript, so let's go! Let's start this episode with the simplest algebra operations, and the first one maybe will be adding some variables, and I will start with declaring x, for example, which is equal to 5 plus 1 plus 9. I will console log it, and I have 15, so I've added all the numbers here and displayed in the x, so it's super easy in JavaScript. And what is more, I can add also strings, so I will change x and reassign for example, Casper. I will add space, and I will add the full stack dev, and I will console it log. And I have the entire string. What about not adding the space? There is no space between these two elements. So that's how work it with strings. And what can we do if we pass, for example, string here? So I have 5 but string and another variables numbers, and I have displayed in the console the 519 but as a string type of, and it's a string. Maybe I will make a pretty console x it is a type string. Okay, and what if I pass string at the end? There will be 6 and added 9 and also attached a string, so it is basically a string, but it added the first numbers. And what when I will add string in the middle? Also the same, it's changing everything after this string to string, and everything before also overall it's a string, but everything before string is just added and there is an operation. So maybe I will subtract like that, and 5 minus 1 is 4, and the rest is a string, so I can see it as a string. If I delete that, there is a number and everything okay. If I pass there a string, there is a 14, so operation was made. It's a big surprise because it's not treated like a big string. There is a minus operation and it's counted like the number. Before we go to multiplying and dividing, it's worth to mention that strings does not allow to make some subtractions, and it's directly impossible. So this is why it's treated like a number, and I can't, for example, make a declaration of a string like let s is assigned to string Casper, and for example I will console log s minus a and expect that the result will be Casper without a. It will be just not a number. So every time you see this sign in the console or wherever, it's just not a number indicator. So we can go to the multiplying, and I can make, for example, a declaration of an a variable identifier, and it's assigned to 5. Let b, for example, assigned to 2, and let c equal to a multiplied by b, and console log c a 5 multiplied by b 2 is obviously 10. So multiplying is also working. Of course, I cannot imagine it doing with strings, so multiplying some string by string is also impossible as far as doing it with the division, dividing. So it's reserved for numbers, and we can go quickly through the types of arithmetic operators, and these operators are divided into additions with the plus, subtraction with the minus, multiplying with the star, double star with the exponentiation, so I can make some number to the power. For example, let a is assigned to 5 and console log 5 exponented to 2, and it's 25, so it's like the 5 powered up to 2. Also, I have a division, so division is made with slash 5 divided by 2, so on half it's 2.5. I can make a modulus, which is very interesting operator, so it gives the rest from the dividing. So what it means, I've printed the result as 1. 5 divided by 2 is 2.5, but it has 2 times 2 integer values inside, so I have 2 times included the number 2 in the 5. So 5 is equal to 2 multiplied by 2, and the rest is 1. So modulus is just returning this rest. For example, 10 modulus 2 is 0, because 10 divided by 2 is 5. It's so 2 times 5, and there is plus 0. There is nothing to show. But for example, 14 modulus 3 is 14 is equal to 3 times 4 is 12 plus 2. So the modulus from this operation is 2. That's how modulus work, and it's pretty used in the cryptography. So if you're interested with the blockchain, asymmetric cryptography, or the securing transfer of data, it's a very powerful operation because you cannot revert it. For example, if I have the result from this operation, I cannot get numbers from which this value was returned. So modulus return 2, and I can have different pair, different combinations, which gives this value. Yeah, even if I have one part, for example, I know that it's divided by 3, modulus return 2, I cannot strictly define what the first number is, because there are multiple combinations, and if I have a huge numbers, it's even harder. So that's how cryptography is using the modulus. Let's go for another arithmetic operation, which is incrementation, and it's made with two signs. And it's 6. I can make it few times. And it's 6, 7. The same with the subtraction. And it's reduced. And the quite tricky way of doing that is, for example, variable declaration x and is assigned to 10, and this kind of operation is incrementing x, which is 10, by 5, and it's 15. So this basically means that x is equal to x plus 5, which is 10 plus 5. The same with the subtraction. So I can make like that, and it works the same. I can obviously make it with all of kinds of the operations. For example, divide it, or multiply it, or make a modulo. But I cannot add two signs because this is not a reference. So making 2 times incrementing, it obviously doesn't work. So if I can increment numbers, I can also increment strings. For example, I will type string I am the first and increment it with no, you are not. And it's added to the string. So basically this works, this incrementation works like that also with strings. What is more important, there is another part of algebra, and it's called the JavaScript comparison operators, and I can display some of them. So the equal sign is referring to the assignment operation, but if I make it double equation, it's the equal to. So I will make something like that, something mysterious. I will clear the console and compare if 1 is equal to 1. It's true. So that's how it works. If I type the 3 equals, it also comparing the type and the value. So there is a tricky part. So string number 1 and number 1 is equal in JavaScript, so it can be received as a nice joke, especially when you programmed in some C++ or a low-level programming language. But in JavaScript it works like that. But if I also type the third equal sign, it's false. So this is referring to the type and the value, this only the value. So this is equal, and we can show also the not equal, and to check if something is not equal, I just type it like that and it's false. But if I type here 2, it's true. if I type the string number 1, it's false. But if I add another equal sign, it will be true, because I will also compare the type. I can make also something like check if some number, some value is greater than the other. So it's false because 1 is lower than 2. But if I type 0.2, it's true. If I, however, change it to lower, it's lower. If I want to make an equation greater or lower, I just add the equal sign. For example, if I type 1 is also lower, 0.1 is false. If I type 1 and greater, it's true. Also, I have something like if statement in ECMAScript, in the newest version of JavaScript, and it can be done with the question mark. So I can make if true and add a question mark. So if true, there will be true. If no, false. So I passed the value boolean true, so it is always true. And if it's true, there will be printed the string true. If not, it false. I can negate that, and it is equal to false, so the second part is executed. So this part is like else in if statement. What it does is practically the same, like if true, return true, else return false. So it's pretty the same, and it has to be included, of course, in the function, but I will return the console. I will maybe pass also a let variable is equal to true, variable return console log. And if I include that in the statement, if the function, it will be correct syntax in the console, but basically it's the introduction to the if statements with this question mark operator is the same. So just see what is the simplest version, so we can compare that with the this. So there is one line, there are lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of code. Smart developer also always is looking for the solutions which take less lines of code. The other very significant part of operators is a JavaScript logical operator. So there are mainly 3 operators which you have to know at the fundamental basic level. So I will quickly remove the console, clear the console, and I have one variable true. Let variable 2 is equal also true. I will make variable 3 false. And how it's done, so I will be consoling in the console the output, and basically I have logical AND operator, which is performed with double ampersand, the OR, like that, and I can negate it all, achieving logical node with this sign. So let me do it in this way. I will console log, and there will be a statement, so maybe variable 1 and variable 2, or there will be passed string, if not failed. It passed. Why? Because variable 1 or variable 2 is returning the true, because one of them is true. If one of them was false, it also passes because of the arithmetic logical OR operator. However, if it comes to AND, it failed because one of them is false, and in this case both of them has to be true. But if I make XOR by making a negation, it will pass, because this made false, but I negated that and it's true, so it returned passed. But if I made inside true, there will be failed. So this is how it performs. It can be pretty useful in the if statements and conditional rendering some components in React, or for example in the backend. And what is more, there is another function for making pairing. So let, for example, u is equal to 5, and if I have to achieve the power of 5, I can make math.pow u, and there I can type 2, so 25. If I pass 3, 125, it's the same like u and double, and it's the same. So what is more suitable, it depends on you. You can use both of them. Thank you so much for watching this part of the tutorial. Hope it was very helpful and will develop your skills to get a first job in the 2023. So in the next episode I will go through if statements, functions, etc. and you will be ready to finish it and make some portfolio and get a job. Thank you so much and see you. In this episode I will talk about if statements, so mainly if, else, and switch. It's a very important part of the coding. I don't remember honestly a day without coding if statements, so I think it's a big fundamental. So if you wanna learn that, stay with me and we are going to the VS Code. So basically, what is if statements? You can remember from previous episodes that I was making some very basic if statements to show you how the operations works, logical operations mainly. So I will start with simple if. So I maybe declare the variable, which will be render, and I will set it to true, and let not render and set it to false. Okay, I have two variables assigned with the boolean, and I will make a simple if statement. So if render console log, it is rendered. And obviously this is the syntax. So if render true, render is true, I will console log it is rendered. If I type here not render, which is false, what will happen? Nothing. So this is conditional rendering, but we can make situations when we have some variable, for example from database, and we don't know if it's true or false. There are some conditions, and maybe I will make something like that. Let variable, and it will be true, and if there is variable, console log there is a variable. But if there is no variable, if this condition is not fulfilled, I make something like else. It's a keyword. I don't make any statement here, so this piece of code will run only if there is false. And console log there is no variable. So this is true. So this piece of code is rendered. But if I set it to false, there is no variable. Yeah. And for example, this is the simplest statement, but I can do it also with multiple statements inside one if. And let's do it like that. I will clear the console. And for example, I will make let time and define it to maybe 12. So it's 12 o'clock. And I will make if statement. So if time is lower than 12 o'clock, I will render good morning. Else if, and it's another keyword, after else there is no statement, because if this could be false, the rest is rendered, but else if needs some statement, and if time is greater or equal 12, and I will make AND operator, and time is lower than 18 or maybe 20, I will render good day. And else, so the time is not below 12 o'clock, but there is needed also some other condition. Time is lower than this, and time is greater than 6 or maybe 4. And else console log good evening. So what happened? It printed good day because time is greater or equal 12. Time is 12. So I have the variable, and if this condition is fulfilled, it compile this piece of code and just leave. Nothing else happens. If this is false, it checks this condition. And if it's true, it prints this, and it's visible here, and nothing else is done. If these conditions are false, the else is working. So we can change it to, for example, 1 o'clock in the evening, and we have good evening. Yeah, because these conditions were not fulfilled. I can check 10, good morning. But what will happen if I delete this and set variable to not fulfill any of these conditions? So it will be, for example, 3. I will clear the console to be more visible, and nothing happens. So basically it is how the if statement works. It's very helpful. It is so beneficial to use in the code, but also in the clearest way possible. So I recommend also find some if statements to not render too many arguments here, because if I pass also some or time is equal to 0 and no time, yeah, it's not super clean piece of code. Yeah, so always make the conditions like 2 logical operation or maybe 1. Find a solution to make a clean code. It's a good advice to properly make an if statements and be understood in the pull request or in the team operation. Yeah, because you can find right now how it works, but if there will be too much, you will definitely not understand it in the future, and your colleagues also will not understand it properly. So it is a good advice, and we are going to the switch statement. The next method of conditional rendering is a switch. So basically this is also the most fundamental basic one. This time I can remember the day of coding without using the switch, so it is only needed in some very specific situations, and I will show you why. So I will clear this piece of code and start with coding the switch. And for example, I will declare the variable like color, and it's assigned to string red. Okay, I have this variable and switch. The syntax is like that. Switch the variable. So I take the variable which I want to conditionally rendering. I open brackets and everything is happening inside these brackets. And case the variable is, for example, blue. I want to console log this color is blue. I made an error here. Okay, and break the case, so nothing happens. I can copy that, and case color is green. I want to make the same with green. I will add another one. Case red. I will make the red, and by default I will console log no matches. And what is happened? This color is red, so it's working, but if I make a mistake here, no matches. If I will add blue, this color is blue. If I make an uppercase, it's not the same. If I make green, it's green. So the syntax of the switch is like shown here. I have the switch, I open brackets, add the variable, open curly brackets, and there are multiple cases. Of course, if you have so many cases, it will not be super clean. So use it only with some few cases, because making some if statements with numbers is more clean. For example, I want to render every number below 1000, and if I could make it in the switch, I would go from case 1, case 2, case 3, and make it 1000 of them. So switch is only a good method when you want to render few multiple cases. Like that, maybe some colors, maybe some other variables. So what are the common mistakes in the switch statement? I cannot, for example, break the case. And I will add blue. So previously, if the color is blue, it only console logged this color is blue and it broke. Yeah, everything was fine. I will clean the console. And what happened? It printed this color is blue and this color is green, but the color is not green. What happened if I also delete this break? And it went through the blue, green and red, but it's only blue. What if I go here? It rendered everything. So basically, it can be also a feature, but if you don't break the case, it will go to the next break, no matter what value is passed and what case is there. In the default, it's not needed because after default is nothing to compile, and you have to remember that default has to be at the end of the switch. So it is all from switches and if statements. Thank you so much for watching, and I invite you to the next episode. We are going to the for loops. What are for loops and why we need them so much in our daily job as developers? So loops are some piece of code which is defined to execute some other code blocks if the statement is true and make them iterating. For example, I will show you the first one, which is for loop. And let's define some array. And I will assign to cars array, for example, BMW, Honda, Audi, and let's take something American, Ford. So I have this array and I would like to print every element of an array to the console, and making it like manually, it could take a long time, especially when the array is about 100 elements or thousands. So it's not super practical. I can make, of course, like that. Take the first element, yeah, and go to all of them. So I have, yeah, and it's not practical, not clean, and never do it in this way. But how can I avoid it? I can make something called for loop, and for. How its syntax is built, so I will make let. In the brackets, I define some conditions, some iteration statement, and let y is equal to 0, so it starts from 0, and it's lower than the length of this array, so I will print also the length of array, cars length, increment this variable and do the piece of code here. Okay, the length of an array is 4, but what is more important, array is starting from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. There is no fourth element. I will try to print it. Undefined, but to get the last element I have to minus 1 and I have fourth. So this for loop is executed when the I is lower than char's length, so it's go from 0 to 3, not 4, it's lower, not lower and equal, and it's incrementing. So it starts with I0 and I can make something like that, cars and the position I, so it starts with 0, console log the first element, go with the 1, console log the second element, 2 and 3. Let's see how it goes. And I have all elements here. I can also make this array bigger. Let's assume that there are different variables and I can go through all of them. So that is how basically for loop is working. I can also, let me make an array like previously. I can of course skip some conditions. For example, I will define I here and skip it. It will still be working because in the syntax is required the semicolon here. If I skip this semicolon, there is a syntax error. But now I just give the information to the compiler that the first element is passed here somewhere, or is not passed. Then is the second element and I pass the third element. So one more important thing about it, about for loops, is to never use something like I will increment no matter what. You see how it's counting, there is so much rendering, compiling, it will fill entire memory, so always remember to make their conditions to stop the code, because it will just eat all your memory in the browser. When it comes to for loops, there is also a shorter version of declaring that, so I will go with the cars array and I'm going with for let x in cars, open curly brackets, and console log x. So I see that I will go through each position of the cars array with that. And if I type here cars array and pass x, I will go through each position of an array. So it's basically how it works. It works with arrays and objects, and what is more important, only use it when the order is not needed, required. So I will show you the next method of shortening the for loop, but it's called off. We have undefined, but there is only past x, and I'm consoling it out in the console and it's printed. I can show you one more time. All is printed. It can be made with strings, object arrays, and iterable data structures. So it's basically how it works, and we are going to the while loops and do while. The next method of achieving the loop is called while and do while. I will show you on that, and maybe we will start with while. So while some condition is true, compile this. And I have to pass there some condition, and maybe I will do it with simple while true, console log cars. What will happen? If it will break the console because always is true and cars are printed and my memory is smashed, so I have to stop it. But how to achieve the result like in the for loop with the while? I have to make it differently, so I will start with let I is equal to 0, then while I is lower than car's length, I will compile console log cars and the element defined by I, and then increment I. So it starts with 0, it's lower than car's length, it prints the first element 0, then increments I, then go with this, and the result is achieved. So basically it is how it works, and the next one will be the do while. To show the difference between the while and do while, I will make a quick transformation of that, and this syntax is like do something while true, and I will pass there intentionally false. So in simple while the code should not work, but in do while it firstly compiles the code. I hacked it. I will console this. I hacked it, and then false and nothing's going more. So it's basically how the do while works, and it's needed in some conditions in the daily basic coding, but I don't remember exactly when I used it previously, but it can be something to clean the code and very beneficial, so it's a very fundamental method, and I will try to achieve the same result as printing each element of an array with do while, and I will go with let I is equal to 0, then I will make there I is lower than car's length, then I will increment I and print cars I. What will happen? Will it be correct? It's correct. It worked. What if I go with the incrementation here? It's not working. It's starting with the second element because it incremented. So these structures are like that. Thank you so much for watching this part of the tutorial, this episode with the loops. I hope it was very helpful and beneficial, and with all of the knowledge which I gave you in the last episodes, previous episodes, it's going to make something big, a big difference, and we are going to discuss also objects, arrays, JSON, DOM, algorithm, functions, and the introduction to the frameworks. It will be a huge fundamental for the further development and acquiring a lot more knowledge and go through your web development career. Thank you so much, and see you in the next episode. In this episode I will go through objects and arrays, so follow this to know more about it, and I will start with some declaration of an object to show you what it basically is. And let's start with I will start with car. So object is made with the curly brackets, and it's like a big container which stores some properties of this object, item, whatever. And I have car, so car can have some color, some speed, max speed, some places inside for how many person it can gather, etc. So I will go with the color, and color is, for example, it will be string, red, name, also string, Ferrari, so Ferrari is always red, the best part, max speed, maybe 200 of some units. What is more important, you have to pass the comma to not break the code, and I can also pass some maybe function, and it will be count, for example, count speed, and it will be a function which returns always true. So the object can store practically every data type inside, and if I print it, car, I have Ferrari, color red, function, number, so it's shown exactly, and it's very helpful in the development, in some storing some data in the database, because it can be stored as an object. Of course, I can make an array with objects and store a lot of them, but for example, if I want to describe properly some item in the code, I can use objects and make it adding these features inside. So imagine when there is no object, and it would be super hard to achieve some of them. Oh, sorry. And how to access some props inside. I can do it like passing the property, and for example, car dot name returns the value of name. Car dot color returns color. Car dot max speed returns speed, and count speed returns a function. And what if I type something what is not existing here? For example, places, undefined. It's not undefined. It's undefined, but if I type here also, places, for example, for people can go inside, and it's like that. So it's the way of declaring the object. There is also another way, which I will show you right now. Another way of declaring an object can be achieved like let, I will copy these properties, delete this, and let car is equal to new object, brackets, and inside I type every property which I want, and if I print it, I have the same, and I can achieve the same result. So there is a keyword new and object, and it makes a new object. The same works with arrays, but it will be shown in a minute. So that's how it works. When it comes to objects, there is another thing which is worth to mention, mainly accessing the each prop. I can do it also in the other way. So I have car and I want to print, for example, the color, and I can make it like in arrays, but instead of the place, the number of the position, I pass the keyword, and this keyword is color, and I have red. I can pass the keyword name, and it's working the same. So that's how you can also print a value, have an access to a value, a property in an object. The time has come to talk briefly about arrays. I will delete that and we can go for arrays. So declaring arrays can be made like in the standard way. Let array is equal to empty square brackets. And here I can pass some properties, some items, yeah, like let's do apple, orange, peach. And I can make it in another way. For example, also use let array, but this time array2 is equal to new array and pass arguments inside. Oh, sorry. Without curly brackets, and I will print it array2, and it's the same. So that's the way of declaring an array. I will delete the second one. And array stores items, so it's also a very fundamental thing. And in array I can store objects, strings, numbers, whatever I want. So it can be really helpful in processing some data from database, especially when there is a lot of them, and declaring, for example, let element 1 is equal to apple, element 2 to orange, and element 3. It can be really difficult if it comes to proceed multiple variables. So array is perfect, but what is more, I can pass there also objects, and I will make it with let object 1 is equal to, and for example I will go with name John, age 30, and we'll pass also ID 1. I will make 3 objects, increment ID, look, for example 40, James 20, and I can pass it to an array. Object 1, object 2, object 3 is the new array. I will print it. So I have the array of objects. It's really helpful. And how can I access the first element, second, third? I have to type brackets and pass the position. So an array starts with 0. That's the element number 0. That's an element number 1. And that's 2. Always starts with 0. There are a lot of memes in programming that programmers always count from 0, not 1 like normal person. So I can pass 2 and I have James, I can pass 1, I have Luke, and that's how basically it works. And it's an error, I can't pass anything, but identifier calls entire array. To discuss further arrays, I will go through the different props and methods. So what we can do with an array, I have an array like that, and for example I can make it adding a new element, and it will be made in different ways. So let me start with array.push method. I have an array dot push, and I will add object 4 and declare it here. Object 4 is equal to name, random name. Then after this I will console it log, and I have added another element. I can make it also like in this way, array and define the element here, and I will make a third element 0, 1, 2 and third, and the result is the same. I can skip some positions and for example make 7, and it looks like that. Maybe I will console table, and the index 7 is filled with this data, so I skipped that. And in some for loop iteration, the values for the indexes 3, 4, 5, 6 will be just undefined. We talked about adding some elements into an array, but we don't know still how to pass a prop feature in the object. So I have declared one object, name John, age 30, ID 1. I console table it, so there is an object, and I would like to pass, for example, the mail key, and it's made with object dot key, so I'm dot mail, so I'm accessing the key mail, and there assign it to the string John with Gmail, and then I will console table, and we have now also the mail. I can also make it with the second way, passing the string of keyword, and it's the same result. In this episode I will talk about JavaScript array methods, so let's jump into it, and let's imagine that we have two arrays. Array 1 is assigned to an array with two elements. For example, I will go with cars, BMW and Audi. Let array 2 assign to an array with, for example, one element, and let's do an Opel, and we have a situation when I want to join these two arrays into one, and I will do it with the method concat. And how it's made, so let joint arrays be assigned to array 1 dot concat array 2. I will console it. And we have a new array with 3 elements, like I made. And perhaps there is another situation when I want to join multiple arrays. So I will add extra 2 of them. Array 3, array 4. And here maybe I also declare with 1 element Suzuki. And here Honda, and for example Ford. Okay, and let joint arrays be assigned to array1 concat array2, and to add the third array I have to, after comma, add another array, array3, and I will pass also array4. And I have the new array with 6 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All of them are assigned to new array. So that's all about concat method. Let's go to the next method, which is copy within. So I will delete this one. And we'll go with the array1. And I will make add array1 that copy within and pass 2 and 0, and I will console log array1, and it's what basically made is copying the first 2 elements, but maybe I will also add some other stuff to be more visible. So I will add also this and this, delete them, and I added the 2 first elements in the next positions. That's how basically it's working. Maybe I will change to 3, and I copied the first 3. When I take 1, I copied the first. I can also mix that and copy the first 2 array elements to the 3rd and 4th position, and it's achieved with passing 0 and 2. To have a clear image of that, I will show you that this number is the target. This is the start and end. So I copied the first elements from 0 to 2 to the position number 2, 0, 1, 2, and I copied first elements. So the result is that these elements are pasted here and overwritten. Copy within method doesn't create a new one, so it always overwrite, and if there is a 3 element array, it will only overwrite the first one. The next discussed method will be .every, so I will check if every element in an array fulfills some conditions, and let's create the array with some numbers. Let numbers, and I'm assigning to an array with elements like 10, 2, 3, 6, 90, 100. And to check, for example, with which every item is greater than, for example, 10, I'm doing something like numbers. I'm taking the identifier of an array. Then I type the keyword every. Then, according to ES6, I'm iterating through each element, and each element will be now identified with an item, and I'm making an arrow function, and item greater than, for example, 10. I will assign it to the new value. Let is greater, and now I will console log it is greater, and it's false because not every number is greater than 10. I will, for example, change it to 1. It's true. So to sum up, I'm taking the identifier of an array which is declared here. I pass the keyword .every. It iterates through every element which I called item. I can call it element, for example, but it has to be the same here. It's an arrow function, and I'm checking if it's greater than 1 or whatever. And then I console log it. Everything is working. So arrow function will be discussed in the episode of functions, but right now you can go for something called pattern recognition, and you will know how to basically do it without the deep understanding, which will be proceeded lately. But right now it can be very beneficial to learn quicker in the next episodes. Right now we know how to concat an array, how to copy within, how to check if every element is fulfilling some conditions. So the next method will be filling an array with some value. So I will leave the array numbers, and I will go, for example, with numbers and fill, which is the another keyword, and fill with string. It is an extra field value, and I will console log. And entire array is filled with this value. So I declare the array with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements, and 6 elements are here. It's not adding some additional value item, but it fills entire array. But I can only make the fill method from the starting position and ending position. So for example, I want to fill first 2 positions with this value, and I will start with the 0 and finish on the second. And first 2 values are with string. It is an extra field value. If I want to start in the first position and finish on the position number 5, I will fill the center of an array with this value. So basically this is how it's working. Another method will be the filtering of an array. So basically I can do it with the previous array of numbers, and I want to achieve, for example, filtered array, but I will assign to the new variable, which will be filtered array. Is assigned to, I will copy that here, and numbers, keyword filter, and here item greater than 10, and it returned me items with elements like 90 and 100 because only them are greater than 10. If I want to do it with number 3, it deleted these two items. So filtering is a super beneficial method which can help you filter some data from database or from a response from the server API, and you can attach it easy to the front end or back end like you want. In the next method I will use the same array and find some variable. So I can use, for example, I will change this identifier. So found element, I will pass it here, and I want to find the first element in an array which is greater than 3, and it returns 10. But if I want to, for example, achieve with 80, it will return that element. It only returns one element, the first one, which fulfills these conditions. Let's imagine the situation when I want to add for each element in an array, which includes only numbers, some value. So to have it proceeded, I have to type something like numbers dot for each, and there I will pass a function, for example add element. I will declare there the function add element, and here I will pass item, index, array, and array index is item plus 10. Then I can console log and I increased every number with the value 10. How it happened? This method allows me to go through every element in an array, which is constructed like there is passed an item. So for 10 is passed 10, 2, 2, 3, 3, 6, 6, 90, 90, 100, 100. Then is an index, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I pass an array and array of index. So I have the position, then I have the previous state of an item and increase it. I can also multiply that. I can do whatever I want. So it's basically how it works, and there is define the function, which will be shown in the next episodes. Let's go to the next method and I will show you the includes. So we have some array with strings of fruits, orange, apple, peach, grapefruit. I have this, and I will check if this array includes some element and it's made with fruits, includes, and I will check if there is an orange. I will console it log, and it's true, but with lowercase it's false, it's not includes. Lowercase orange, I will check if it includes some of, for example, some string, also false. Peach it includes. So basically this method returns a boolean true or false. If it includes, it's true, if not, it's false. I checked if the array includes some element, so I can maybe check an index of some element, and I can, for example, make it with the declaration index is assigned to fruit index of and pass the apple. I will console log and it's 1. So it is extremely beneficial if I firstly check if it includes and then return an index, so it can be easy to proceed some data from the array. And the next method can be like if is array, so I can check if the passed object is basically an array and it returns true or false. So I have fruits and I can pass here fruits dot is array. Next method will be checking if the passed argument is an array. So I can do it with declaration of result, and I will check if fruits is an array. Array is array fruits, and it's true. So it works like passing the keyword array, then dot is array, then pass an array which I want to check, in this case fruits, and it returns true or false. It depends on this. If there is an array, it returns true, if not, it returns false. And I can make, for example, the same with the string. Let, for example, text is equal to some text, and I want to check it. I will pass text variable, and it's false. So text is not an array. What to do in a situation when I want to return some array as a string with some word between that? I can achieve that with join method, and I will make fruits dot join, and here pass, for example, the word and I have entire array stringified with the and between of the words orange and apple and peach and grapefruit, and it's all. Next methods are for checking the length of an array, so it's done with fruits dot length. I will console it log and will know the length. The length is 4, so that's how it's checked. I will also show how to go through each element with the method called map. It's a mapping. Mapping means literally that I will go through each element and I can do whatever I want. I will try to console log each element. Fruits.map item arrow function console log item, and each item is mapped and console log. So it's a very basic function in JSX in React. I really recommend it to know, and it's a big fundamental for the next step in web development. What I can also show is the pop method. So I have the array of fruits, and to get rid of the last element, I will make a pop method, fruits pop, and console log fruits. And there are 3 elements, last element is deleted. The next methods will be reverting an array, so I will make quick fruits.revert. Let me check. Reverse is a keyword. I just reversed an order in an array, so it's like that. Grapefruit was the last, now is the first, and orange is the last and was the first element, so it can be very helpful. The method for deleting the first element is shift, so I get rid of orange. With the pop method I got rid of the last element. With shift I get rid of the first element. The next one will be slicing. So slicing, what does basically mean? I will declare a new variable sliced, and it's equal to fruits slice. Let's pass arguments 1, 2, 3, sliced, and I received apple and peach, so it's sliced first and the last element with this, and it basically works with the start and end. So I'm taking the first element, which is the 0, I'm removing that, and I leave the first element and the second element. 0, 1, 2, 3 is passed as the finish, so it doesn't include the return. One of the last methods will include that sum, and what it does is returning the boolean if some of the element has fulfilling the requirements. So I can make another array, let numbers, and is assigned to an array with such numbers, and I will go with let result, then console log result, it's undefined, and there I can go with numbers dot sum and check if some item is greater than 20. It's true, because we have these items greater than 20. I will check if some item is, for example, lower than 1. False. There is no lower number. So it's basically how this sum method is working. I can present also the sort. So I will sort an array, and it's sorted like that. So we have an array and we would like to sort it. So sort method is sorting elements with alphabetical order. Maybe I will do it with strings. So I will go with apple, orange, kiwi, peach, and let result is assigned to numbers dot sort, and there is an alphabetical order. I can reverse the result. And we have reverted order, so it's how it can be achieved. Another very useful method is splicing. So basically how it works, I'm taking the array dot splice and I will get from the position 2 items. So I get kiwi and peach. I can get from position 1 2 items. So I get orange and kiwi. And for example, I can get then and add some new positions like lemon. And for example, what can I also add is watermelon. But I have to change it, maybe like that. I can also stringify entire array, and it can be made with numbers dot to string and is stringified without no space and added the comma. This is all for this part of the tutorial. Thank you so much for watching this. These methods are very helpful in the developer career, so make sure you understand it completely. All of them are more crucial than others, but it's very good to know practically all of that which I mentioned. I use them in every day of coding in the corporation, in the startup, so hope it was very helpful and see you in the next episode. What is JSON? JSON is a JavaScript object notation. It's a text format used for transporting data and storing it. It's very easy and beginner friendly. So let me go with the example, and the example is a JSON string. So I will declare the new JSON, and it is const, for example, data, and I assign here a string, JSON string, and the syntax looks like that. So inside the string I have a curly brackets like in an object. I have the key, and this key will be, for example, name, and the value also string, for example, Johnny. This is the key, and the value is a pair of the data, and for example I can add also another pair, and it will be an age. And this Johnny is, for example, 25 years old, and I add there a data type a number. There is a string, so it can be mixed. I will go further which data we can use inside of JSON, but for example we can define also something like ID, and here type also some numbers for ID number. And it's basically a JSON string. I will call it log, and it's here as a string. So what we can do with that, let's go to the next step. Let's briefly discuss the JSON objects, and it looks like more similar to JavaScript objects, but you have strings, and obviously there is a curly bracket like in JavaScript objects. And what's inside? Inside there is a string as a key. In the JavaScript it would look like, let me go data.js for example, and I will copy the what's inside, and in JavaScript it would look like key is not a string, and it's very similar. What is more, in JSON we can pass values like strings, numbers, arrays, objects, Boolean null, but it can be passed something like function or date. It can be in the JavaScript object, but definitely not in JSON. It's a big trouble in a JSON format. So if you serialize or parse the JSON to retrieve the data from inside, there is always a problem with date, yeah, because function you can skip, but date it has to be serialized with some additional syntax. Let's go deeper into JSON, and I will declare a new variable and assign their JSON object. So I will skip the string and I will show you how data can be applied. So like we talked, there can be a value string, there can be a number, there can be a boolean, every pair is separated with the comma, so I can go further. I can go with the key, for example, employee, and pass there an object, and this object also has the keys with the string. For example, let's pass Microsoft, and what can I also pass with the number is here. Okay. Oh, it's going to save as the normal JavaScript object. So that's how it look like. Obviously, it can be also an array. So I can pass, for example, something like paths, and here will be an array of strings like dog, cat, and some what can also be, for example, hamster. And that's basically how it works. I can now create a new file in my directory, and we'll show you how to basically make a JSON file. So JSON file has an extension JSON. I will copy this data, pass here, and I'm going to make it correct. So I'm going to pass strings as a key. Also inside the object. And the last value cannot include the comma. So this is the correct structure of JSON in the data.json file. Okay, so let's go back and work on the data. So I can take a JavaScript object and also make it a JSON, and it can be done like, for example, const data is equal to JSON stringify, and I can pass the JSON object. I can console log. So I have the proper JSON made from this, so you can see that keys are also the strings, not like in the JavaScript object. And to retrieve data from the JSON string, I can use something called like JSON parse. And for example, I will make a const object, so it will be a declaration of the JSON parse data. So what basically parsing is doing, it's going to revert the JSON to an object, and I can access each value by key, like in JavaScript. It's very helpful in the making requests and handling the responses in the backend. So basically, every endpoint is giving us a JSON as a data from database, for example, and the front-end developer job is to maybe render this JSON data and create some components which will take as arguments this data which are parsed. So I have this object right here, parsed. So I have props like name, age, is adult, employee, and pets. And I would like to access, for example, right now I will log only object, and I have there an object, and I can access, for example, name, and there is a John. So no problem, I will clean, and I will access, for example, age. There is an age. I can access pets like in normal JavaScript object. It's working properly. So this is how I can handle JSON in the both sides. I can create from object a JSON by JSON stringify and parse a JSON to create an object and manipulate some data to some conditional rendering, or strictly directly rendering some components with the props. So basically it is all about JSON in the beginner part of the tutorial. So that's what you need to start development in the JavaScript developer job or web developer. Is totally sufficient. So we will go to the next material and see you. In this episode I will briefly talk about the functions, how it's defined, how it's about the syntax, and how it's done with the JS. So let's start with VS Code and the console log in the right side of the screen. And what is a function basically? Function is the piece of code which is not executed immediately, but is stored to later, and it can make some operation. It's in the simple words, and let me go with one of the functions. Function syntax is pretty simple. So basic function syntax is like defining the function with the function keyword, and then I pass the name of the function, and let's be, for example, multiply, and this function will be multiplying. Then I pass the arguments, parameters, and as the multiplying in this function will occur with the two parameters, two arguments, I want to make a multiplied by b, and in the brackets I pass a and b, and then I open curly brackets, and there is the code to be executed, and with the keyword return I just telling the compiler what this function will return after calling it. So every time the multiply function will be called with the arguments a or b, it will return a multiplied by b. And that's pretty simple how it works. And let's go with the calling the function. And for example, I will declare a variable result is assigned to multiply, and I will pass, for example, 2 and 5. Okay, and it's made. I will console it log, and I expect the result of 10 with the data type number, and it's basically done. What is worth to mention, a JavaScript function can be also be defined like an expression, and let me go with that. So I have this console log and the previous function, and I will make an expression and assign it to a variable. So for example, I will define something like constant and some function is equal to function, and then I will skip the function name, pass only variable and arguments and what it's returning. Then I will just remove multiply and type some function. So basically call this expression, and it's working. We can see how it's multiplied. Why the functions are used in the developing? From my opinion, I believe that functions make the code cleaner, so I do not call something immediately and make a memory of an application of a browser totally filled up, and it's just a clean way to make some piece of code, declare the function even in the separate file, and it's done in the serious developing like that. So I declare the separate file and the function and export that, and in the other file, when I have some front-end or other backend services, I can easily call that and nest in then another function, and it's pretty clean. For example, I have some serious function for getting data from database, and there are some services about it. So I do not make a super long function like thousands of lines of code. I just make one function which is calling multiple functions from separate files or places in the code base, and it's the file structure is like different folders, so with its names, and it's pretty clean way to handle that, not be totally lost in the serious huge code base, and make it super clean. And these are totally two arguments about that, so not execute immediately the code, but for example, in some conditions, in some places, export that and not fill entire memory after the combining the entire function without calling that, but immediately. So after this summing up, I will go and make some other functions, and let me start with passing some arguments and examples about that. So I will have a function, for example, I will declare in the old way function, and there will be, for example, we'll be passing multiple arguments, like I will take some function. I don't know exactly what it can be doing right now, but I will pass, for example, some variable a, b, c, d. The function will be here, and I will declare some parameters and let string is equal to some sort of text. Let array is equal to some array of, for example, fruits, orange, apple, peach. There will be also an object. Let object is equal to, for example, some object with name, John, age 30, and for example position, job position, dev, and maybe I'll pass some boolean, so let is employed and equal to true. Okay, the compiler doesn't see the result. Then I will pass all of these variables inside this function, and what this function will make. So I will declare the result, with constant, const result is equal to some function, and I will call some function with string array object is employed. Of course this is undefined, but after modifying this function, this result will have the value of the returning value. So if I type here return by default 10, it will be 10, yeah, like in the console. But I will make some more complications, and for example I will console log every parameter. So like you see, I passed to the function some function, these identifiers of the variables, and there I have a function with a, b, c, d parameters. So it doesn't have to be exactly the correct name of the prop. Yeah, in the function definition I can make it like a, b, c, d, and everything what will be passed here in this place will be the current prop. And let me demonstrate it pretty simple. Maybe I will change the order. So right now I will make it with BACD. So it's changed. Yeah. Maybe I will go with 2 A's. Okay, it's like that. And let me go with changing also arguments here, and I will pass string here. It also changed, yeah. First is array, then string. So the order is there, the key. And I will make something like, so d will be always boolean. It's not clean, but it's only to demonstrate. So if d, so if d is true, I will return, for example, 10, and make a console log. It is true. It is true. I will clean that. And maybe I will go with else. So it's not true, it's false. I will console log it is false and return, for example, false, there, true. So the result will have the variable like in this function what is returned. So there is an if statement, and if the boolean is employed is true, it will return true. If false, it will return false. What is also made within the function, the console log function is called, and the console will show it properly. Let's check this function. Okay, it is true, and I will set is employed to false. It is false. I will go back to true. It's true. Okay, I have something like that. And what I will do next, maybe I will go through some iterations of array. So if true, I will go through a variable parameter, and for example, what is there, I will map through it, item, arrow function, and for example, I will return console log item. So it's iterating. What can I also do is, for example, return object, but the keyword path will pass the name, cname, and we return John as a result. So basically I can do anything in the function, and this is the craziest function you will ever see, so try to make it clean. It's just for demonstration, but in the serious development, let's go through the example how it's proceeded. I will clean. Okay, we're good to go. In serious development, I can go with something like that. I have a function, and for example, sum, and it will take arguments. I will open it. To demonstrate it, the sum function can take some arguments defined outside the function, within the one script. So, but basically I will be coding in this way, and there are some numbers, and for example I can have a parameter numbers from server, something like that, and numbers from interface. So it will be two arrays, and I have to return the sum of them. And for example, I will define there let numbers from server be equal to 2, 8, 9, 6, 12. And then let numbers from interface can be like that. Okay, and I will change names, so array 1, array 2, and what we'll be doing, for example, I will go with let sum is equal to 0, because at the beginning it's 0, and then I have to go through for loop. And what I can do it in the multiple ways, but I will try to make a function inside the function and show you how it can be proceeded, and it's possible. So let's start with the declaration of another function. function and some elements of array, make the name correct. There are parameters and there is an array, and what it returns, it goes like that. I will define let sum also, and it's at the beginning 0. Then for loop for, I'll go with let y is equal to 0 semicolon, and it will be less than array dot length. Increment the index, and the sum is equal to array and then index of an array. Okay, so sum is equal to sum plus this I element of an array. So it goes like that. Sum is at the beginning 0. I go through the entire array. We pass the array 1. We are at the first element 0, so I just recall that the first element in the array has an index of 0. So I go through the I equal to 0, and there is the sum equal to this combination of signs is the same like sum is equal to sum plus array I is the same. So basically it goes through the first element and to 0 adds 2. Then loop is going to the next element and is adding to the previous sum the next index, etc. till the array length -1 because it's less, not less and equal, and goes to the last element, and I will return sum. Okay, so I have the function for summing, and there is an error, some elements of array. So I have the single array, and here some arrays will be more appropriate. I will make similar, so I will start with, I will skip this let sum, let sum, oh maybe I can go with constant sum 1 is equal to some elements of an array, the first argument, and sum 2 is equal to that. I return sum 1 plus sum 2. Okay, so the logic is ready and I can finally sum these arrays, and let's go with that. So I will go console.log and result, and I will define result constant result is equal to some arrays, and I will pass array 1 and array 2, these two arrays. 52, so basically I can also pass here the console log array 1 sum 1 array 2 sum 2. So the first is 37. Let's quickly check. 2 plus 8, 10, 19, 25, 37, and this 3, 6, 10, 15. Everything is correct. I can delete it. Console logs cleaned. And these functions are working properly, so it's not a big deal to nest a function inside a function. Is how this serious programming is working, and I recommend you doing the same way, cleaning up the code, not making one long script, but using these features of functions. And let's go also for the last point of these functions. And for example, in the ES6 there is something like an arrow function, so the way of defining function is slightly different. So I will leave this, for example, function, and there is some return, for example array, and the arrow function is declared like that, constant, and sum is the name of the function. There is an equal sign, there are arguments, and there I make an arrow which basically defines these arrow functions. Then I can return array. It's pretty the same, it works the same, there is no keyword function, but that's the syntax of the ES6. More modern way, it's used by the modern developers, and that's how the modern developers should code functions. So in the next tutorials I will use this declaration, so everything basically works like that, and it can be called like console log sum, and I will there pass an array 1, 2, 3, and it returns an array that works correctly. Thank you so much for watching this part of the tutorial. Functions are very fundamental things, and it has to be mastered to even handle some basic programs, build some applications, and go to the frameworks like React, Angular, and Vue.js. So it's definitely worth of trying, exercising, and trying on your own how to make even a simple calculator. You can skip the UI at this point and just write functions for multiplying, dividing, summing some numbers, subtracting, and displaying the console log. Add some values. It's just a recommendation. You can try it on your own. You will also try some algebra, some if statements, operations on an array, which was mentioned in the previous materials. So you can use all of that packed in one simple program, even without the interface, and try to check your skills and master it, and we're ready to go to the next challenges, build a real project, go to the DOM manipulation, some algorithms, and to the frameworks, which finally boost your skills and help you get a first job position as a web developer. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next material.